IVM.
One of the biggest market disruptors in recent times have been direct-to-consumer brands. These brands have grown by creating products around specific consumer needs and have leveraged the scale and reach that digital gives them to grow at a pace that wasn't possible before the e-commerce revolution. But since the pandemic hit, they've had to reset, rethink, and reorganize in what is, for lack of a better way to put it, deal with an unprecedented situation. To understand this further, I have the founder of Rage Coffee, Bharat Sethi, on Advertising is Dead, to not just discuss what makes Rage Coffee unique and how he's dealt with the pandemic, but to also kind of dig into some insights from his previous startups, as well as to understand how an entrepreneur like him looks at the world we find ourselves in right now and how we see ourselves moving ahead. I'm Varun Dugirala, the co-founder and corner chief of The Glitch, and we'll be right back with Advertising is Dead.
How many times have you motivated yourself to improve your sleep or lose weight or be more productive? How many times have you failed? Hi, my name is Ashton Doctor. Tune into my show, The Habit Coach Podcast, where we focus on creating small, tiny habits to improve your life instead of those big, impossible tasks. So make listening to me a habit every Monday, Wednesday and Friday on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcast.com or on your favorite podcasting app.
Welcome back to Advertising is Dead with Bharat. Hi, Bharat.
Hi, Varun. How are you?
How have you been? I know that you and I have been meaning to do this, and we've had one failed recording because I had to run off for some work. But I'm glad we're finally able to do this. How has the last month out been for you guys? I mean, obviously it has been, especially because you're in a business that requires manufacturing, requires logistics, requires a lot of the pieces that have had the most amount of strain.
Right. Thanks for having me, Varun. And yes, we've been wanting to do this for quite some time, and I'm glad we are now able to find the time for it. So it's been extremely, I think I've had these spikes of, like days where I feel it's great. And, I'm prepping for the next world order. And there are days where I just want to stop predicting and kind of, wanting to go with the flow. Not trying to invest too much anywhere in any of the capacities, put every hiring on hold. So I think those spikes were there initially. When it all started, the business, the kind of business, as you mentioned, we're in, we need the on-ground supply chain logistics. We work with several vendors, partners, people who provide us ingredients, people who could do contract manufacturing for us, people who, and companies who supply us with the packaging materials. And there are about 40 odd vendors that we work with for about just 5 or 6 SKUs that we do. It's a complicated supply chain at the ground level. And then we need all this logistics to work flawlessly because of the experience we want to provide to our customers. So I think that was the most troublesome. And the only good thing about that was we're all in the same boat. All of us, all the businesses, all of our competitors outside, and everybody was just kind of pausing for a while. So that's the way I started to look at it. And then there was spikes. And then I think about 1 month into the lockdown, I personally felt that this is an opportunity for a consumer packaged goods product like ours, a CPG business, a coffee business, a new age business that is direct to consumer, that does all of it, branding, marketing, online. So all of this was there, right? So I started to look at this as an opportunity, and we started to ship out orders 1 month. And so we basically got all the pieces together, the minimal that we could, and we built all these very strict procedures in the company. And the rules, changed overnight. The rules of doing business, the rules of running a production unit, so to speak, dispatches and on-ground collection of payments, all of that kind of changed, right? And the way we want to work with our vendors, the credit terms, etc., relooking at contracts. So all of that was happening, and I'm glad we took that decision because there was a pent-up demand, and because our biggest competitor now, the coffee chains and the coffee shops, are closed, right? So we see this as a huge opportunity, and we were about to launch a couple of new products, so we put that on hold. And we might go ahead and go into production for that also very soon. Those are the ready to drink variants of the formulation that we have developed for the coffee. So a lot of things are happening, man. It's been up and down, but I'm glad we're now back on track. Last week we shipped out more orders than we used to do all of March. But yes, there's a pent-up demand, as I mentioned. So that surge was there. But I think we're going to go back to the levels we were. And I think we're in a position to do it more than anybody else because we've predominantly been direct to consumer in terms of all the functions of the business.
You made a couple of points which I want to take up individually, right? I think to just kind of start off, I want to also kind of take a step back and say, what was the base idea behind starting Rage Coffee? So maybe let's start with that, because a lot of new age CPG brands are built around almost unique propositions, right? And yours is unique in that sense. So what was the base idea in kind of building it out as a brand? Where did that kind of
come from? Yeah. It started with a very personal passion. It started, it was the right intersection of my passion and a huge market opportunity. So basically the idea was that there was nothing, in the high quality coffee experience that we wanted. The premise was that we always wanted to either go to a specialty cafe or to a high-end coffee chain to get that experience. And otherwise, we need to really brew our coffee and do it the right way. We need equipment to that. We need time for that. So when we were looking at the market, we saw a huge, blanket white space in basically the coffee market. And then we looked at various opportunities and we wanted to compete with the experience of a freshly brewed cup of coffee. That was my pain point, personal. I wanted to essentially have something that was affordable. And when you drink 4 to 5 cups of coffee every day, you want something that is also consistent with your palate, with your mouthfeel, with your taste buds, etc., etc. So that's where we started, and that's where I personally jumped onto this idea in 2018 of March. And I have a lot of experience in nutraceuticals, and I've run a brand which I also currently run called Ayur, which has been basically working with indigenous botanical products, which are functional in nature, right? So the functional coffee market was what happened when I was talking to a lot of people and digging down on the nuances of the business proposition that we wanted. And there came an unique idea from a lot of people that we were talking to, that they drink coffee for the kick that they get, right? The caffeine kick. And that kept coming back all the time. And the caffeine kick was something that I also drink coffee for. And everybody around me, wants to drink coffee for that kick. And it's an addiction. It's the best kind of addiction that you can have. Given coffee, is caffeine in general has been, in the last 10 years, so many studies have told about the importance and the benefits of drinking caffeine, etc., etc. So the functional nature of the products came a little after we started building the product. And then there were 3 things that we built out. One was the entire supply chain. We are outsiders to this business, right? So we looked at the entire production from a very outsider's perspective and told, like, what can we change in this, in terms of, looking at be it the supply chain, be it the raw materials that we use, be it the production processes to make instant coffee, right? And we then created something which is now known as the small batch crystallization that we do, which was earlier done only for brewed coffee, or for grounded coffee rather, that you would get in the food service business. So that was the one big thing that we changed. Then there was a formulation, the 6 plant-based vitamins which we add, which give you the, caffeine kick, that works. All these ingredients work synergistically with caffeine, giving you this kick that rivals, this experience of a high-end, freshly grounded cup of coffee. The third was we looked at the market and we said that there's a big gap of all these people traveling to their offices, to their gyms, to different cities, to hotels all the time. So this big opportunity was missed out right now. And then we created these shots that people can travel to. So a lot of people in the fitness community started using the product initially when we launched. So we started
almost like a pre-workout in that
yeah,
sense.
they use it as a pre-workout because there's glutamine in the product, which helps you for it helps you for recovery of your after a good workout. So it helps you in recovery. It's amino acid basically. So a lot of these 6 plant-based vitamins are also used for functional properties in a lot of functional food. So that I think worked really well for the fitness community. And then, the target segments continue to expand. We then recently got into flavors, right? So flavors is something that was a big gap because people are now addicted to the, hazelnut flavor of this huge coffee chain and this caramel mocha and this and that. So we wanted to create something that rivals that also. So we went ahead and launched these 4 flavors recently this year in January, which has done phenomenally well for us, which has opened new kind of markets for us, bakeries, Horeca. So yes, man, a lot has been happening. The ideas have been quite simple. Honestly, I think we just looked at it from a lens of a very common man's needs.
And what's also been interesting is and this is what I find cool about new CPG brands, is that you looked at a product innovation not just from the product itself, but how it's actually delivered.
Right.
The shots for me are very interesting, and because that's something which you can kind of carry in your bag. And that's what when I was running through all the stuff that you've done, I thought it was interesting. Also, just not on every side of things, the fact that you can actually buy it in a certain way, which is not traditional, how you'd buy it off the counter. And these are all benchmarks of what a direct-to-consumer brand actually does, right? And even in terms of your marketing, so I've noticed that your marketing focus as well has been very, would it be right to say that you're very performance marketing focused, plus let's say influencers, etc., and all that stuff, and that was pretty much how you were looking to kind of do your marketing spread as well?
Absolutely, Varun. I can't disagree more. I can't agree more. Sorry that we have looked at this entire market from a very different viewpoint. DTC right now, in the way we look at it, it's very unique products, and then the distribution is altered, and you go direct to consumer, breaking the entire supply chain. And what we looked at, I'm now at this stage where I want to, build a brand that stands the test of time. And building such brands take time. They need a very, very loyal customer base, and that critical mass of that customer base needs to be achieved. And so the way that I look at the brand presence is that we want to do things that are right. First of all, we want to do things that I stand by, which also comes to the fact that when we looked at the market, we said we want to go sustainable, right? So these entire shots that we did, the longest time that I spent, before launching, the last 3 or 4 months was spent in just getting these PET tube shots to become biodegradable, right? So one of these tube shots to us costs about $50. Imagine that's the production cost for it. And that's huge. And we pass it to the customer in the right way. But the things that we want to do are, we want to do things that are futuristic, that also stand the test of time. Now, having said that, DTC is not just about breaking that supply chain and going, directly to the customer or doing unique propositions. It's also about, getting that people to believe in you, what you're doing. All of that customer base to really believe in what you as a brand stand for. And that's very, that you can't push to a customer. You can't do a lot of marketing and just tell that to customer. It takes its own time. We are very, I think, very performance marketing driven as of now. We do a lot of influencer campaigns. We partner with people that we believe are the right, spokespeople or brand advocates for us. It's largely been very digital. We have, the team that we have for sales, they have, a lot of experience in coffee distribution in the institutional business. So, for example, one of our sales directors has spent about 7 years with Georgia Coffee. So, he was with Coke, he's at the national sales head. So all of that experience helps us in pushing these right products to the market. And we do some kind of POSM, at the retailers and distributors that we work with. But more or less, the brand has been built very digitally. So the communications that we open with our customers, there's a lot of feedback that we take from them. So yeah, it's very focused on customers, and that's what I like to say, and I like to talk about when we talk about our brand. Be it the digital channels or even be it the offline channels, we want to be talking to our customers.
This word performance marketing, right? Till I think some time back, it was not really in everybody's main focus area. It was something that people would do. And especially with e-com first, brands would build themselves with e-com as a strong part of their entire focus to sell. It's become a core focus. From a brand perspective, from your end of things, how do you look at performance marketing? For you, what are the most important parts when you look at that aspect? Because I'm sure that's a core part of you really making sure it's efficient, but also there's clear focus on efficiencies, on the fact that are you targeting the right people and etc.
Yeah, I don't know world, Varun, where I can't measure my marketing. I haven't ever built any business in the last 10 years that I haven't been able to measure my marketing results. I was involved with something that I wasn't able to measure because it was an exhibition and events business, very hardcore offline business, I'd say. And I was agitated, man. I just couldn't work my head around it. And I was always asking these questions that people in traditional marketing, businesses just don't know how to answer, right? What's the ROI? And what's the impressions? How many people can I, reach? And all these, there's no math to marketing in traditional ways. It's more of brand building and that's all. Marketing, I believe that for us, it's being a digitally native brand. The only thing that really makes or break is the unit economics. If you do not have your unit economics right, you cannot really build a brand online beyond a certain top line or whatever, beyond a certain metric, because it's impossible. Online businesses can consume a large amount of money without being able to tell you in reality where they're going. You know what I'm saying? You can put in millions of dollars in online marketing and all of these metrics that you will see will tell you that you are moving ahead, but eventually, you'll run out of money because, your CPTs or CPCs or whatever, all of your entire unit economics was misleading and actually, kind of fallacious, because it was telling you painting a picture that doesn't exist, because all of these acquisition costs really do matter. For us, it's the only way. Even with working with influencers, right? We do have a very strict, ROI that we look at, and we measure all of those results. I think a brand in today's time cannot work, especially if you're a hardcore digital brand in any field, in any space, be it even financial services or FMCG or apparels or home, any kind of brand. You cannot succeed online if you don't really know your unit economics. And the core point in unit economics is your acquisition cost. You can have a gross margin of 90%, but if you're spending double or maybe even 3 times, 4 times, and there are businesses that do that for a long time before realizing that the unit economics don't work for them. So I think it's a very complex discussion. It's a very comprehensive discussion also, and it needs a lot of time. But at the outset, I can tell you that I cannot work when I can't measure my results, and performance marketing is the only way I see a brand going from 0 to 50 in the early days. I don't see performance marketing as the only way eventually to build a large company. But initially, before hitting a certain metric, I don't think online brands can succeed if they really know how much they're spending and what is the ROI they're getting and what is the lifetime value of the customers.
I think also the entire COVID period over the last month, before we start recording, you and I were discussing how it's kind of changed so many things and is going to continue to, and a lot of the changes are going to stay in scale as as we move ahead. I think one of the core pieces has been that marketing, and this is a transition that has been happening over many years now. But I think the question of efficiency of saying, okay, when I want to make, like you said, unit economics, right? Saying that if I'm spending a certain amount of money in marketing, what is the actual value I'm kind of getting back? I mean, that's something which I think everyone's kind of looking at a lot more, or rather, from my side of things, we as agencies or also at some point have turned around and say, okay, one second, if I'm doing marketing for a brand, what am I really delivering for them? And I think that's really a question which takes away a lot of what we've always had, right? I mean, the large scale TVCs, the stuff that people kind of have joined agencies for years, which is technically called the sexier stuff or the more fun stuff. That doesn't necessarily mean good business anymore for brands.
No, I completely agree with you. I think these times are definitely making every senior leader, every founder, entrepreneur, all these promoters, small business owners, everybody realize the importance of profitability and bottom line and being in green. I cannot emphasize this more right now. I mean, I'm sure, all of us have read in the last 1.5 months about all these webinars, all of that. These discussions have happened, so many of them, everybody's talking about the same thing. But it will really start to pinch businesses now. It will start now and it will continue for some time, at least, unless some magic happens. And I don't see that happening right now, at least. But profitability is the name of the game now, because just buying customers or buying growth is not going to work, because the businesses, they needed capital. Capital comes from one way or the other, either through debt or equity, or through friends and family. All of those means are now going to be a little tight. So I think unit economics is going to be extremely important. Every business needs to go down and focus on the survival. And I think I've heard it for the longest time, and I keep repeating this, because now that I've gone back to business, last 15 days, I've realized that it's really true, because the metrics have started to, the entire economics, and when you really chart it out, you see that, you have runways of like X amount of months, and for that you cannot really, make mistakes. There's very little room to make errors when it comes to your cash flows. So I think working capital requirements will go up. There will be less money circulating for these people, on these business owners to take. And I'm not talking about only highly capitalized businesses which were very heavily venture funded. So they too will definitely feel the pain. They are definitely going to feel the pain, and I presume there's going to be a lot of bloodbath in terms of firings and a lot of people losing their jobs. And the markets are going to maybe stabilize with their rates, with the salaries or the take homes for a while. But I think all of that will happen, and I see this as a not so bad thing, honestly. Not so bad. And of course, I mean, you're still being able to operate. I mean, 1 month when I was not operating, I felt sick, man. Like, it was a really bad, weird feeling to not be able to go to business and, be able to pay all these people that work for you, this family that you're building for yourself, and these people who are really looking forward to come to work. And it's also emotional in a way where, some people might see this as an opportunity. Some people might look at this in a very different perspective. But I feel it's good. I'm just happy being able to be back to work now. And I think the story that will unfold from here on is to just be able to survive.
How have you seen... So while there is a certain way in which you might have been manufacturing so far, what kind of changes have you had to make to... I mean, because obviously it's changed entirely in terms of just... This word social distancing, especially from an Indian context, is a tricky one, right? Because we generally are a lot of people in most places. So, and especially if you're in manufacturing or if any kind of like space, there is obviously a lot of people. So what kind of precautions have you had to take? What kind of changes have you had to make to how you even at least that part of it? And obviously then we'll come to logistics. But how is that? How would you see that changing now from a manufacturing standpoint?
So I think from a manufacturing viewpoint, a bunch of things have changed. One is the number of people who were working in the units. I think that has come down to now about, we are operating with just about 15 to 20% people. So that is one change that I see, and that I think will continue, because if you have to really follow social distancing, and if you really want to make any good use of this entire ordeal that we're going through. I mean, we're changing so many things. I think social distancing in a unit which earlier used to house 60 people now has to follow social distancing. So now it can do 15, 20 people at best. So I think one thing is that we'll have to lower the production capacity, and that also means that we'll have less products, especially for us. Like, I'm not talking about an ITC or a Marico, right? So these guys would behave very differently. But for a growth stage company like ours, we definitely need to make these changes. And I mean, we would definitely do even lesser discounting for that matter, right? We were doing we were not a discounting brand. We never believed in, but even now we're not even wanting to do even 15-20%. So, I mean, those are the things that will change. There will be a far less discounting in the future. We'll be very sure of the payments, right? So all of that will change. We'll have very strict credit terms coming in, so that thing will change. From a unit point of view, the entire manual is there now. People have, so they have these thermometers that they need to, the thermometer guns, that is done. They need to work only when it's needed completely. So they need to come to work only when there is demand for them, and they have the charts. So they have to come to work for 4 hours, then somebody else will come. So all of that entire routine has changed for these people. Another big thing is these people need to travel to work, right? And they're not well off to own cars or bikes. Some of them are not very well off to own cars and bikes and all of that. So a lot of these people will not be able to make it to work. Eventually, that's also another problem, because unless we see everything going back to normal, that is the what do we call it? So some term has come for it. It's the outward transportation to office or something like that. So that is hit because the public transport systems are hit right now. Then the PPE kits and all, man. So we are also very lucky to be in a situation where we just have to have about 15 to 20 people in the unit because we can afford these kits. I mean, I don't know if you can afford 10,000 kits for your work staff, and so we are taking all of that.
And imagine on a daily basis if you have to do that, then that is a lot of. It also then brings an entire a very different perspective, right, on the overall e-com business in general, because the entire e-com business has been built on the fact that people want stuff as fast as possible, as cheap as possible. Do you think the consumers become a little okay, I'm at least getting it? I think has a consumer become like that, rather than I remember the time when if you could order something today and hopefully you'd say, why can't I get it today itself? Or why do I have to day after? Now it is like, oh, ek hafte mein mil raha hai, so it's fine. So
that's the only sigh of relief. Honestly, Varun, I think being in these kind of businesses for so long, I think now the only respite that I have is consumers are a little bit more forgiving right now. They are definitely willing to wait, and they are also they have matured in the sense that 50 million kind of customer base, right, that India has, which are active shoppers, and they do everything online, and they want everything to be delivered to them at their doorstep. Those Netflix audiences, right? You understand what I'm talking about, right? So this audience definitely has matured, and that's a great sign for DTC brands operating in mid to premium segments. So I think that is the only relief that we have, at least, that people are more forgiving. And I see that, because I interact with a lot of consumers myself on social media, because I send out emails to them, I receive the feedback emails. So I'll give you a very good example. We're only taking prepaid orders, and we have not done that ever. I mean, even my earlier businesses, I've never, totally done away with COD in the entire lifetime of that business. So I think, and I see, because we are also talking, all these founders of DTC brands, we're talking amongst ourselves that we want to do away with COD, and I don't think, I think the top 15, 20 brands in India are looking to do away with it, and also they've done it. I mean, people leading in the personal care space, in the food space, in the apparel space, they've all decided to let go of COD and see where it goes. We have not seen a hit, and I don't see that, people are paying. Even the lowest denominator of, in terms of the financial wealth in this country, they are also taking Paytm, and they're taking all those wallets, and they're doing transactions online. I think all of us now are prepared to transact online fully. I don't see cash as the reason. The only reason why people would want to go for cash is, number one, laziness, or number two is lack of trust.
One of the things this whole thing has done, right? It's made, I mean, for those of us who have the privilege of having houses or having at least spaces which are slightly, not as claustrophobic. It's like we've all started looking at our houses saying, one second, there might be a chance that for the foreseeable future, for a large part of my time, I might have to spend at home. Which means that a lot of the experiences, a lot of stuff we want to keep at home. I mean, the amount of things people are preparing in their own houses, right? The stuff they actually want to have. Before, if it might have been, okay, I want to have coffee in the office. Your home is your office now, right? So I think, and also you want stuff that is fast enough for you to make, because you have chores to do, you have office work to do, etc. I think generally there is a consumer shift which might even happen from a mindset standpoint of what they might want as a home experience, because a lot of the experiences now might shift from being social in terms of outside home to being in home as much as possible. And I guess e-com is a strong part of that, because you will have to have a lot of these things delivered. And at that, I remember you mentioned a little early on in this conversation, the fact that you mentioned that one of the core competitors, which would be the coffee shops, they're not operating right now, right? So what do you see? How do you see that kind of playing out as you go ahead? Like, because all these spaces were built as both social spaces, plus you could drink coffee. But now, because you might not, being social itself is a problem. Do you see that whole playing? Because they've had, obviously, if you call it a head start, if that's the word you use, over the years in this entire market. Do you see that dynamic drastically changing now?
Something's coming to my mind with this, and I was listening to UK's Prime Minister, Boris, and he mentioned, I think 2 days back, he mentioned something like, there's one thing that I would never say again, and something on these lines, don't quote me on this, but something he mentioned, I remember it, the punch that he made. He said that, I think what the mistake that I've made over and over again in the last 20 years is that I say that the world will never be the same again. And that's a mistake, because every time, 9/11 happened, and this happened, and there were other, in lower and higher degree, there were other issues. But the world bounces back in a different way, maybe. But I see that in the foreseeable future, CPG and, all these e-commerce stores, and all of us, like people like us, brands like us, would definitely see a huge surge. But I don't think it's going to be the way, like for the longest time. Or there will be a tectonic shift in the consumer's mind. There will be a shift, and definitely people will understand the convenience aspect of it, right? There's a massive convenience in ordering from your phones and getting it the next day, or the day after, and you also save money, and you have a process now set for it. So I think that will definitely happen. But I think at the same time, whenever this kind of starts to go down, when you will see these malls and these cinema halls and all these shopping centers and entertainment things, like even outside parks open up, I think people will go out like mad cats, because honestly,
You'll miss it so much.
we are
That's why you'll
social
want to
animals,
do it
man.
more.
We can't. We the experience of going to a store and buying a piece of cloth, I think is, for me, I see both markets can coexist and do really well together. And an omni-channel for a brand is the only way that's going to be there. We are so heavily, ourselves as a brand, we're so heavily invested in the offline markets. That we know we are bullish. We're still bullish on it. It's just a matter of time. Of course, in the foreseeable future, like in the next 6 months, maybe.
How do you see e-com kind of changing here? Both in terms of just the experience of it and also like how consumers will look at it going ahead.
There are many things changing, in e-commerce right now. And
especially
I think
in a category like yours, right? I think both on that, but wider, but also like a category like yours, both.
So in a category like ours, at least, we see that grocery per se is very, very underpenetrated online right now. It's less than 2%, so it's 2 to 3%. But honestly, those numbers are very heavily bent on, let's say, the big basket and the grocers, right? So online overall grocery is extremely underpenetrated, and that already gives it a huge room for growth. So in our category, I think there will be lots of new models that will be experimental. So even if you look right now, what has happened is everybody who had feet on street, or let's say drivers on ground, Zomatos and Ranzo and all of these people in social commerce, all these people like Bulbul and Simsim and Misho and all these content commerce players, they LBB and Men's XP, everybody has gone to e-commerce, right? So it talks about the available breadth of the market that's still so open. At the same time, grocery is basically a section and a category that is extremely underpenetrated. So what everybody has done, because essentials was the buzzword last 1.5 months, everybody has started to realize the need. So Zomato has gone into delivering essentials, and all of the people that I talked about, they've all gone into delivering essentials, and I don't think they'll stop now. So the market will certainly increase in size. And because the consumer shift is also happening, the adoption will also come in very quickly, and it's already come in, right? So I think in our category, I think the most interesting thing that's happening right now is the entry of newer players that are well funded. Also, new players that have the dimension and the knowledge to the experience of building something on ground and kind of expand on that. Other than that, I think DNVBs, digitally native vertical brands, are definitely more and more are going to come. And I was seeing that Pepsi has, in the last 1 month, has worked on introducing all of their categories in the North America online. So they've gone completely direct to consumer. I see a lot of these traditional brands, these big billion-dollar, brands now going to direct to consumer, finally realizing the importance of it. So it's going to be all, I think it's going to be very dynamic. I think next couple of years are going to be very interesting for our category online, and I think the room for growth is so much that even if we go from 2 to 15% in the next 5 years, I think that's going to make many brands very successful.
I also feel that subscriptions, although that's been an option we've had for a while, I mean, I don't know, if I was a consumer today, I would look at subscriptions in the sense of saying, once again, this is something which I definitely should put in, because in a way I'm almost like, because you never know, because I think the worry of the waiting of being in waiting will stay for a while, even after delivery logistics normalize. So everyone's going to be like, okay, if I can subscribe to a product which comes to me on a regular basis, I would rather do that right now. Have to go every time. So I mean, that's one more behavior which, like, it's almost like how you have a milk subscription, right? I think everything is going to become become that, like, so it's going to be, I wouldn't say it's going to be a whole different world, but I think it's going to be very interesting going ahead. And you have you actually been an entrepreneur multiple times before this. if you look back at your earlier ventures and you think of present context, do you think that what you are doing now is actually in some ways a blessing? This is actually the product that you have right now than any of your earlier ventures. So, and because obviously your earlier ventures have had their fair amount of success, but I just want to kind of dig in, kind of compare what you've done in the past and now.
Yeah. So it's a very interesting, I think, question because I started, e-commerce when I was 16. I was started, fiddling with e-commerce, and this is 2006. So this is the time when there was no marketplace available in India. So I was trying to do something with my brother, over eBay. So I think the power of the internet and utilization of that power to sell has always been something that I find very interesting. And I started Postrugally in 2011, and I was 21 at that time. Obviously, it was, as I mentioned, Rage Coffee or whatever we're doing, even the all these direct-to-consumer brands that I'm building within this one umbrella, they are at the passion. They're the intersection of my passion as well as a huge market opportunity. At that time when I started Postrugally, it had exploded, and I've still not seen that kind of explosive growth because e-commerce was negligible. So I started this category of art online and affordable art online in India. There are many subcategories like posters and art prints and customized merchandise and the entire decorative glass frames and frames online. So all of that, I started in 2011 and then decided to build on. So we saw an extremely successful time period with that company. And I would say the biggest learning that I have from those 4-5 years of my experience there is that you need to be able to grab what you have, the opportunity, for future success, and to continue your success. So I think so there are lots of interesting learnings, but I think the biggest one would be overall from Postrugally is to be able to let something go on for a long time. I think with Postrugally, I think the biggest mistake that we made was we sold too soon, because I think maybe of short-sightedness at that time. But those 4-5 years, I exited the company when I was 25, and we all we were about 10-15 people, even the company at its peak, and we were doing millions of dollars in business, and it was a great experience, a very good journey. But the market opportunity was not so big, or because of our shortcomings, we could not pivot into the right market opportunity. And I see some of our competitors at that time who started after us, sticking onto the guns and doing it for a long time, and now be able to build large formidable companies also. And those were opportunities that we missed out on at that time. And then obviously I think because of all of those learnings, I was able to build iDecorama, which was again a B2B e-commerce marketplace, which really I think grew to become a very successful venture within its audience base. But the mistake that I made there and the learnings that I have from that business is how to choose partners very carefully. And what the what acquisitions can do and what acquisitions cannot do for the promoters. So I think a very honest conversation here from my end. But yeah, man, like
that choice of especially when there's an acquisition or when there's a partnership involved. I don't think there's a right answer there. I think most times, as much as there is paperwork, as much as there is this thing, at that time you just go on gut and in terms of vibe, and it works out in some cases and doesn't in some, I guess. And that's the only way which I've come to look at it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think for an entrepreneur, I think the only currency that we have is knowledge and experiences. 10 years into e-commerce, and I think uh, there's so much that nobody can teach me, because it's only because of my experiences in failing, in succeeding with all of those, um, activities is when you can really understand the nuances of a market, and it takes time. I think as an entrepreneur, we all have our own learning curves as well, and I think to just accept that is, I think, the most beautiful thing that as an entrepreneur you can do, because you cannot go into a market, go into a business knowing it all, right? And the more you are absorbing of things around you, I think the better and the more scalable business you can build. And with time, I think if you are at it, it will happen sooner or later.
A large part of this, the audience of this podcast is young, right? I mean, those are people who would be in college, who would have just started working, etc. Yep. And I think a question a lot of them kind of keep asking is, okay, if I'm working in this entire, I'm working right now. I mean, I don't know, entire space. I mean, everything is now kind of overlapped in that sense of where we are. Especially if I want to work in new age brands and companies like yours. Going ahead, I mean, obviously some things will stay constant. What would you say are things I need to keep in mind?
I think a better way to answer this would be to look at the functions, right? So in a company, the major functions would be, let's say, operations. So I think a skill set that is very valuable in operations is the discipline that somebody can have, the knowledge with basic Microsoft tools like Excel and Word, and the ability to understand how to build processes and to execute those processes that can help. So I think in operations, I think generic profiles, people who are young and people who are also very enthusiastic, are able to do really well. But most of the operations profile would need some kind of experience, right? So I think I don't see a lot of very young people, people who with, let's say a bachelor's or a master's degree, doing very well in operations early on. So they would typically come in at a level where they have some kind of very technical experience. Shifting to marketing, advertising, I see a lot of opportunity for young people there, because the biggest gap that companies now will have is the ability to go digital. And these people are very native digital users. They've already spent so much time on Snapchat and Instagram and all these social media tools, right? Now TikTok, right? So a lot of brands like ours, and just generally companies, would struggle to go digital. And if they don't go digital, they're probably going to be go to dinosaur age or something in 2-3 years. So I think the biggest opportunity for young people is to be able to utilize their skills in marketing and advertising. If they have those skill sets, and if they have interest, they could probably look at internships or training with somebody for a while. Very, 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 very talented people will figure out, very creative, talented people will figure out where they want to go. But going to sales and distribution, I think it's always an entry point for young people. If they really are good at sales, I think there is no stopping at. I see sales as the only profile or job function which really doesn't really matter what's your experience. If you're good at it, your numbers will speak for you, and that's all companies care for. I mean, doesn't matter if you have 10 years of 1 year experience. If you are bringing in more numbers, and if you're really good at it, talented, and I think sales is a great opportunity for a lot of people who are very good with their people skills. I see these three, and then there are obviously other opportunities in HR and in hiring and people management and community building, etc. So I think those are opportunities open for a lot of people who have generic business skills.
Do you also think it's a good time to actually think of and maybe start a startup? Because I've always believed that at a time when things are at in many ways their lowest is when there's opportunity for newer things to kind of get created. I always go back to the fact that we started Glitch right after recession, and that has been my prime example every time. Do you see that as also being an opportunity right now for people to kind of say, okay, when this might be a good time to come up with something to do?
Absolutely. I think that's what history tells us, right? I mean, if you look at even 2008 or 2001, even beyond that, right? If you go back just a little bit, 64, 93. So I think it's a great opportunity for people to look at real needs of people. I think the only caveat to this would be that really people who are starting out know what they're doing. You know why I'm saying this? Because building businesses is a very long and tough battle. Okay, it is not about making something in the short run or doing something that can go from 0 to 100 in 2-3 months, 1 year. It more often than not will never happen. And I am yet to come across somebody who has been able to hold on to that wealth or that kind of growth. So I think a lot of people, it's a great opportunity for people to look at tech businesses and any kind of tech, entertainment, media, gaming, e-com, brands. So I think that's a great time. But I also would want to warn everybody who's starting just to be making sure that they understand their capital requirements really well. Because at a time like this, also the challenge is that if you are out of, let's say, a job, or if you had offers and you're not able to join somewhere, the pressure to I think the right way to put it would be the need to become successful would be more, and you would be pressurized to perform more, do more, and in many cases, you would run out of capital very fast. So I think the most important thing would be to understand the capital requirements, also have a very solid plan in place, and also enter a market that you have either a huge passion for or you understand the economics of it really well.
Towards the end of every episode, I do this segment called Humans of Advertising, right? Where I kind of ask, we've had a lot of technical conversations so far. I think this is kind of a little lighter to kind of end things off.
Okay.
What are you a consumer of? Which people who would, know you professionally would say, okay, 1 second, is this something he actually consumes? I mean, something that you consume, something you spend your time doing, which normally people,
which would actually surprise people.
Yeah.
Dude, that's a tough one. So I believe a lot in neurohacking. So I think a lot of people would not know this, apart from my family or friends, that I use a lot of supplements. And these are either botanicals or these are vitamin-based supplements, but I take about 8 to 10 different kinds of supplements every day.
Okay. Wow. That's interesting. And what can you put together in an instant?
Coffee.
Anything you've been consuming of late, let's say books, podcasts, anything you listen to which you think is interesting and which you think people should consume as well?
I think there's a game called Tennis Clash. I think in lockdown, I really spent a lot of time on it, and I'm addicted now. And there's another game called Ludo King.
Ludo seems to be the thing.
And it's very interesting,
it's
a great way to pass time, and that's on a lighter note. But I think I've been learning a lot about podcasting, and I've tried to do mine as well. No, I've not spent a lot of time doing it, but I think that's the future, because I tend to spend about at least 1 hour every day on podcasts, and that's my with my evening coffee, looking at the sky, listening to a podcast, and to the right one, I think is my go-to.
What are you listening to these days on podcasts?
I'm listening to a bunch of things, man. I listen to a lot of comedy. I tend to listen to your podcast also. Advertising is Dead, and I really like it, actually.
Thanks.
So that's there. I listen to motivational talks. I listen to a lot of business talks. There's a podcast that I'm listening to which talks about big brands competing with each other. For example, Big Burger and the Burger King and McDonald's, and their marketing strategies and what they did to kind of bring the other one down, or just let's say Nike and Adidas, all these big brands, and what hacks they do. And very interesting, they do a lot of these different kinds of things. I listen to, very interestingly, I started listening to audio podcast, Hindi podcasts, and these Hindi storytelling. And I was very surprised with some of them. They were very, very good. And there was one, I think I have to remember the name, but it was basically a crime show, but done very well in Hindi.
Was this Bhaskar Bose?
I think, I think it was something with the red, it's a red, they have a red icon. I have to go back.
It might be that one. If you're listening on Spotify, that might be one.
Spotify.
Yeah, it might be that one. So Mantra does that show. It might be him. I'm guessing, because his one is in that space. And my last question, as always, is why will advertising not die?
Okay. I think advertising will not die because people need to feel themselves.
Makes total sense.
People need to feel the need for filling gaps in their lives, and I think advertising just helps them fill those gaps, because they can then look at all these different kinds of things that fill their lives.
That's I think a good way to kind of end the episode on. Thanks so much, Bharat, for doing this.
Awesome, man. I've had a great time. I hope all of your audience enjoys it.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of insights there, especially for how the market is right now and where it's kind of going. And I think it will really help, because I think everyone's kind of right now trying to predict, but I think it's more important to kind of say, okay, how are things actually functioning right now? And then in some way kind of also kind of understand where it might really go. So I think a lot of insights.
Yeah, it's month on month, man. Yeah. It's every month, even I would say every week, 1 week at a time.
Super. Thanks, Bharat.
Awesome. Thank you, Varun, so much. I had a pleasure talking to you. Bye.
Bye.
I hope you enjoyed that show. We'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Paytm Money. While we're still going through lockdown, let me recommend a few quick shows for you to listen to. Check out Uncle Please Sit with Joel and Tushar. Really enjoyed that show. They unpack some of the greater issues that we're facing, and I think you'll enjoy that. Also, do check out The Traveling Professor. That's a fun show that I think you're really going to enjoy as well. Fulia Bazi is a great show. It's a Hindi show about policy and things like that. They had a great episode last week. A close friend of mine from college, Joy Paul, was the guest. They talk about different social networks being used for different things. Very cool show. And lastly, let me tell you about Simplified. Simplified did a live episode last week, and we're making the first part of that available on their feed right now. So do definitely check that out. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Thanks, and please do keep listening.
Beta, did you know 79% of all scientists in NASA are Indian only?
देखो, इंडिया में टैक्स सिर्फ मिडिल क्लास भरती है. Everyone is just enjoying free यार.
आजकल के youngsters are only interested in partying and enjoying. उनको देश की पड़ी ही नहीं है.
बेटा तुम बस शादी कर लो, उसके बाद तो you can enjoy life like anything.
I will tell you what this country needs. This country needs 15 years of dictatorship. That is the only way to become a superpower. See the Chinese, how much they've progressed.
सुनो, तुमने ये WhatsApp forward देखा?
So what's common between all of these statements?
They're all absolutely rubbish.
Fake WhatsApp forwards that spread like wildfire.
And statements that defy any logic.
We are here to debunk them all.
Way of family WhatsApp groups, worst nightmare. Where what happens when you read a book.
Basically, we are just a bunch of guys who want to cut through the bullshit of everyone saying this, how it won't be true.
So that the next time someone confidently squeezes out some WhatsApp or Twitter BS, you can look them dead in the eye and go, Uncle, please sit.
So join me, Joel.
And me, Tushar.
Every Mondays for a fresh new episode of Uncle, Please Sit.
Hi, my name is Anupam Gupta. I'm B50 on Twitter. I am the host of Paisa Vaisa, the show that talks money. On my show, I speak to experts from every field of money and finance. From stock markets, equities, debt funds, credit cards, life insurance, every possible area of money and finance that you can think of. We even did an episode on cryptocurrency. I've got fantastic guests from mutual funds to personal finance experts everywhere. Robo-advisory, startups, just name it, we've got it. At Paisa Vaisa, we help you make smart decisions about money. You work hard for money. Now make your money work hard for you. New episodes out every Monday, and you can listen to my show on the IVM Podcast app or any other podcasting app that you have. Paisa Vaisa is brought to you by Paytm Money.